We are live. Hello and welcome to Community Manager Live. I'm David Dewald, Community Manager at Sienna.com. Each week, we will bring you we bring community professionals together and ask them questions on a topic. If you would like to chat along with us today, you can join us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch, where we can actually pull your messages right into our stream and show them on screen. If you prefer to just watch or listen, you can do so on Twitter or LinkedIn. You can find links to all of that at the top of the page on the communitymanager.com. Hey, I did pretty good with the teleprompter this time. I'm impressed.
I was like, hey, what's a perversion? I'm one of those.
So what we're going to do is I'm going to just let my co-host here, Tim McDonald, say hello, and then we'll go around to Adrian, Jen, and then hit Ray at the end. Just say who you are, what you do, and where you do it.
All right. Well, I am so excited to be here today, especially since we have some old community manager friends joining and a new one. So I am Tim McDonald. I am the head of community at Homeroom, and I was previously at HuffPost before that, and started my community manager where we had hangouts every Friday at this time. So I'm so excited to be here and see some faces that were on many of those hangouts back in the day. So, Adrian, over to you.
Well, hey, I'm so glad to be here. This return, we were just chatting before we went live. This is kind of a mini reunion for many of us that had done these, so long ago. So I'm Adrian Spire. I'm the head of community at Higher Logic. And prior to that, I was at Vanilla Forums. So been building community for a very long time. Just really happy to be here and meet Ray, new friend, and see some old friends as well. So Jen, off to you.
All right, thank you. And Tim, did you just call us old?
Old friends.
Yeah, old friends.
People.
All right.
It's old as far as time, not age.
Although that might also be the case, but whatever. I'm Jen Lopez. I lead the developer relations team at Contentful. That includes developer advocacy and community and developer marketing. I've been in the community space for, close to 15 years or so now, and have done a lot of stuff with this group in the past. It feels like kind of a bit of a lifetime ago. But I'm really excited to be here as well. And thanks for inviting me.
Of course.
Ray, over to you.
Cool. I guess I'm the newbie here. So my name is Ray. I'm the head of community at CubeDev. And we're a pretty small company still. We're in the data analytics space. We're about, 3 years old as a project and the company. And before Cube that I joined about 2 years ago, I was at GitLab, and before that I was at the Linux Foundation. So I've been involved in open source community management for a number of years now. So.
And we have one more guest with us, Akshay. If you will just, if you feel like turning on your camera, great. If you don't, that's fine too.
Yeah.
So tell us who you are, where you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me here. I guess it's my first time and pretty excited to be here. Definitely the noob among the guys who are sitting here. I've been into building communities just about a year, and I started off managing or building communities in Web3, which is kind of the hub, I would say, for managing communities as of now. So I'm just here to observe, understand what you guys are talking about, and probably add a few cents of my experience as well, because I feel building communities in my with the Web3 side is definitely different from what I've observed communities are like in the Web2 side. So definitely here to observe and learn a lot from you guys. Yeah, thank you.
Very good.
I was going to say actually that this is like the perfect place where we all share and learn together. So
Yep, absolutely. And it's good that we have a cross section. I've been doing community management for just about 25 years. You're in your first year, second year maybe, and we've got everything in between. So it's perfect. Mm-hmm. So I'll get us started. What we'll do is we'll have a question. I have a bunch of questions, but we're not going to do it like in order like we normally do, because these are more open-ended. We'll see where the conversation takes us. based on our answers, and maybe we'll dig into some of those and maybe we won't. The questions will appear above for everybody else on screen and watching. It's mostly there so I remember what we were talking about, but also so it makes it easy for me to you guys to see where we are and what we're talking about later when we do a restream. So our first one, and it's the topic of the day, what pain points have you experienced during your community's growth?
Does it have to be experienced or can it be experiencing?
Either way, it could be on the receiving end or on the front end where you're hitting the pain points that you've created yourself, or maybe you're a community member and you've had pain points in a new community. I'm open to whatever we want to talk about and where we go with this.
Yeah, and
I was going to say,
I was going to say, David, that we enjoy this as not just a Q&A for everybody to give their answer, because we can also ask each other if we need expounding on something or want to follow up on something. So don't feel like you need to wait to be called on. You can just get in there and ask a question.
Yeah, I was going to say I've had fortunate pain points. Twice in my career, I've worked at video game companies in the past, and twice in my career, I worked on a game before launch that was then successful after launch. And that caused my community to go from, maybe tens of thousands of members to hundreds of thousands of members in a few short days. And there's just no way you can really truly prepare for that. I used to have a piece of text that I had lying around that I used to call it my wise sages speech. And it basically went into the community before the event happened. Like, we knew it was going to be successful just based on playthroughs, and we knew that we were going to get a lot of traffic because there was a lot of hype and news around it. So I would go into the community and say, look, you people who are here now you're the Jedi, basically, and we're about to get a whole bunch of Padawans. And so you need to show them the ropes and teach them how we do community here. So don't be rude, don't be mean, just try to be, the Jedi and say, this is the way, the way that we do things, and don't glom on and attack people, but just say, we don't do it that way here. We do it this way, and be nice about it. People are going to ask questions that they can find by searching. Don't tell them to use search. Tell them the answer and say, our search is really good. Try that too. So, that's the best I can give you as far as a pain point. And then I've had communities that just never fully launched because of internal buy-in that was there, and then the person that really set it up left the company, and that left me dangling basically with no support. And that is really tough. And I managed to stick with that one for an extra year after they left, but I could never get the buy-in that I had from C-suite after that person left. It was just very difficult. So.
Yeah, I guess I have, somewhat of a generic, generic observation or point, I guess. One of the things that I see typically when communities grow, nothing of the scale that David, you talked about in gaming community, but even if like a community grows from like a 50 to 100, you're basically doubling. But what you would often see is that the demographics of your community start to change, like not just in terms of like a geography, but things like industry and job title. And then they have like a new needs and different set of needs that they have for your product or for your community. So sort of trying to evolve your community along with the increasing diversity of the community, which is, in general is a very good thing. It's absolutely a good thing. So that can be a challenge. So it's something you need to be like a cognizant about in terms of how do we need to evolve as a product or as a community. So that's a challenge that I've seen number of times. And the other thing is, when you have a community of like a few dozen, you pretty much like know everybody, but that stops once the community reaches a certain point, then that's no longer true. So, you try to like instrument things and try to do different sorts of outreach, but yeah. So, I think those are the two like the general challenges that I've seen in the communities that I've been involved in.
Well, for my part, I mean, I guess because I've worked at a vendor now for probably almost, wow, it's going to be 10 years soon. And certainly I've also done a lot of communities work, but the pain point that I have run into, and I'm sure that a lot of people have had that, is not as advertised. And so one of my early communities that I had, we selected this vendor. I'll save their name because it's not nice to them. They're bankrupt anyway, so it doesn't matter. But we ended up getting spam bombed by a whole bunch of spam bots because we made the mistake of launching a community on a Friday. And I came to work on Monday, and let's just say there was a lot of spam. And so I called the vendor, and I was like, so guys, you got any spam checking type tools or, flood control? Or they're like, no, we don't have any of that. And I was like, how's that possible? None of our customers ever asked us for that. And I was like, you've got McDonald's, you've got Coca-Cola, you've got some pretty big brands. I'm pretty surprised you don't have that on your tool. And they're like, well, we can build it for you. We'll get you a quote. And they came back with a number that was absolutely ridiculous. I'm like, I already had all the budget approved for your platform. There's no way that I'm spending this money for a fundamental piece of technology in the community, online community, of not having spam control. Like, it just, they didn't even have the basic level 1 where it would just block someone writing the word Viagra. Like, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, it was just,
how
yeah.
How is that even? How can that even be a thing?
Let me just tell you that this software company is since bankrupt. So, but
it's because you wouldn't let them upsell you, Adrian. That's why.
Hey,
you're responsible for it.
Well, I mean, I kind of wish that because of conflict of schedule. I would have loved to have been in the last week we were talking about software selection and stuff, because I mean I have conversations about all the time, because that's the stuff that keeps me up at night sweating.
You might be biased though.
No, but listen,
I
don't.
I'm kidding.
No, but I mean, people. But I want to correct you because we're friends. People know
Yes.
this about me out there, and those that don't know me, I want you to choose the best solution to meet your needs. I don't want you buying our software and being unhappy and saying, "Oh, it doesn't do this, and then you have a bad feeling towards us." I would rather you say, "I want to choose your solution because it does all the things I want it to do," and because I see so many times, and I know we're kind of veering off a bit, but I see so many times someone will take like a WordPress and try to make it into a community, or they'll take a community and software and they'll try to make it into a blog, and then like, oh, you don't have all these features that I need. It's like, well, we're not a blog software. And then they just leave with this taste of, oh, like that software is not good, and that's not, you just weren't using the right tool. And so I'm very passionate about that. So if anyone's going through a software selection, I'm always happy to chat about that stuff.
Yeah, and in complete fairness, I'm a big fan of vanilla. So don't ask me because I'm biased.
I guess in my field, I would say one of the biggest pain points is that almost every single Web3 or NFT enthusiast is in at least 100 different servers, right? So the ability to actually grab their attention and bring that relatability to a project has always been a huge struggle. Because even in my case, I actually observe more than 30-40 servers to see what they are doing, and the attention span of these Web3 people is very low. So you have to like get them on within 3 to 4 days, keep them engaged almost continuously. And if there is a better program, better giveaways, people just shift out to the other community. So to identify that unique aspect was actually challenging, and we usually go for different content. And since Web3 people are more, compatible to the meme-related content, we usually stick with that, find relatability to that, and then move ahead. But yeah, to find that unique point of a project or a product has been struggle because people are in 100 different communities altogether.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you think that maybe, and I assume you're talking about Discord. Am I right?
Yes, Discord, yes.
So
The Web3 don't do Slack or
yeah.
we're not
Well, I
using
mean, is it possible that a chat app isn't the best place for a Web3 or NFT community?
people
I mean,
go
it's
for the more
immediate.
gamified version. Yeah.
So
I mean, they go for more gamified versions. So I think Discord helps to facilitate these conversations. And
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I feel like an old woman when I go to Discord.
No, the UI
Like,
is
why
what's
is it
funny, though?
crashing?
What's funny is when I go to Discord, I feel like I'm coming home to IRC.
Yeah, I agree.
That is true. That is true. The old.
Yep.
Well, actually, you're right. There are so many servers. That's the thing. And then, of course, with Web3, it's the short attention span because everyone's just yelling, "What about utility? What about utility?" And
yeah,
no
what
utility.
about
On to the
YT?
next project. See you later.
Yeah, so I've always been struggling to keep them in one place for more than 5 minutes. And usually in Web2 communities, things are a bit slow, right? You have the time to talk to people, you have the time to make that connection. But usually in Web3 communities, you don't have that space to actually connect with people. And founders prefer getting 2,000 members on Discord server more than, getting on one-to-one calls with them, which is pretty weird. But slowly there is a change. So, yeah.
I wonder if something like this, if you did something like this, where you brought a certain, brought the people that are trying to do the NFTs, if you brought the artists, if you brought the people running it into the call like this and got people to come in and chat and ask questions, and
Yeah,
if that might help with that engagement there.
Yeah, that's what I try to do. It's a hit and miss at times, but yeah.
I was going to say, I've been on one. He's actually tried that and done that.
See, look at that. You're 1 year of experience versus 25, and you're doing stuff that I would do. So you're perfectly fine.
Best, I guess.
You're doing great. Stick with it.
Yeah. So
anybody else?
I'm going to round out this first question here. I think two of the biggest things that I've run into in community growth. Number one is when you get to a point, depending on what you're using, like if it's a forum and you may have categories or whatnot, but if once the community gets so big, like people don't want to participate. They're like, there are thousands of people who might see my question. I don't want to look stupid, right? So you have to find those ways to sort of give them a more smaller, more unique space where they feel comfortable, where they can start to get to know the people, as opposed to it just being like all these thousands of people looking at what you're talking about. And I think the other thing goes along really with that is localization, because as the community grows, I've run into that literally every place I've ever worked, except for when I ran the community at a localization company for almost 2 years, obviously. But running into the issue of whether it's your forum, it's your blog, it's your training and education, finding those ways to make it much easier for people around the world. Like everything can't be in English all the time, right? Like if you want people to be able to communicate, you want them to communicate in their in a language that they're comfortable in, whether it's their native language or not, but something that they're at least comfortable in. So I think localization is a tough one, especially in something that's like a forum, or there's no way that you're going to actually go translate. You have to find machine translation, and that's not always great.
Fix the
well, I mean, translation and localization are also very different things as well. That people
100%.
Notice that distinction.
Yeah.
I've had debates on endless debates. Well, it's because the Brazilians don't necessarily want to agree on the Portuguese,
Right. Right.
As an example.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I was going to say just to, I think some of these are part and partial to what has been said already, but, in starting communities, it's like, where do you start, right? Like, where do you find the right people to come in and be your first members? Because any community is really built around a healthy foundation of members. And if you don't start with the right ones, I always can, use, a bad apple doesn't just spoil the bunch, it destroys the whole orchard, right? And so you don't want to start with a bad member in your community. So how are you selective in getting people in and training them as they get onboarded to really become healthy members that are going to contribute instead of become problem members that you will destroy your community almost before you launch it. I think the other thing that I get into is, and this brings up something that Jen actually noticed when I started my community manager, was not having all the resources in the budget to be able to do what you want. And so you need to find workarounds to get it done. And the example that I mentioned with Jen was she was at Moz at the time, and we were on Google Plus and using Google Hangouts before they were broadcast. And so the only way I could get people in was to ask them to join our circle on Google Plus. And then I wrote a blog about it afterwards and put I didn't have the video in there, but I kind of did what we talked about and what the major takeaways were. And I remember Jen actually wrote a post about this. I don't know if you remember that, Jen, but you actually wrote about my community manager and how they're using Google Plus to increase the business. And because it wasn't something public, you needed people in your circle, and you needed people, they weren't able to watch the broadcast after it was live, unless if they were part of your circle. So this was a way to get more people back in. I kind of did a circular loop of, people were in the circle, then they could join the Hangouts, and then I'd write about it, and then people would join the circle, then they could join the next Hangout. And that's how the early days of my community manager started. We used to have a saying, whatever happened on Community Manager Hangout stayed on Community Manager Hangout, because nobody ever heard of it afterwards. But so that's one thing. And then I think the other thing is, I've almost always worked in positions as a community manager where I've been the solo person. And there's two things that come along with that. One is making sure that you maintain your own boundaries and your own set of health, because you could drive yourself nuts if you try and be online 24/7 and respond to every single person that's wanting to get an answer right away if you're the community manager. The other thing is that, as a person of one team, it's up to me to figure out how to get buy-in if I don't have a budget, to get a budget for something. And the only way you can do that usually is by working with internal stakeholders and partnering with them with your idea, sharing what you're thinking about. And the common response is, I don't have anybody that I can dedicate to help out with this. And I'm like, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. And I took care of it. And if I prove the worth, then they might have a budget that could help the community part of this program get started. And so it was always like, these are pain points, but I've always viewed things as there's a workaround to anything. And sometimes it's not the ones we want, we enjoy, but you just need to look at things differently,
Yeah. And I got to tell you, that was a perfect segue for the next question. How do you go about scaling up teams and getting more resources? I'm like you. I have almost always been a solo. We used to call them lone wolf community managers, because we were just by ourselves. That was it. In the past, I have built volunteer moderator teams. That's not very uncommon in the video game industry. That's what we did back then, 10, 15 years ago. We used volunteers. And that's how I got my, heartbeats to get things done. I had 14 forums that I was managing by myself, so I had to have it. There's no way I could cover it all. And when I started at Acclaim, that's the main one, we had 3 million registered users. And a short 4 or 5 years later, we had 16 million registered users. So one person, there's no way to handle that kind of volume. So I grew up a team of 200 volunteers. Each of them had their own community. I set up a lead moderator that would kind of report to me, and they pretty much had free reign to pick moderators underneath them to help keep things in order. Never had a budget for the community ever while I was there. Now that I'm further along in my career, I have a nice budget to get things done that I want to get done. Still don't have any help. It's just me against the world. But I've got more buy-in from internally in the company though. So I have different orgs internally that help with the community. That'll get in there and help answer questions that maybe I can't answer, or get to things that I can't get to help our customers. But it takes a lot of effort to build those relationships. I was with my company now 2 years. In the first year, it was all about making those relationships and those connections. And a lot didn't happen in the community as far as advancements and improvements because I was learning the platform. I was learning who held the knowledge that I needed and those kinds of things. So it's been this last year where I've really started to make changes and starting to get things moving. And it's just how you have to do it. But, you know, when you've got nothing happening and nothing improving and you're trying to say, you know, to your boss, I got nothing to show for the past year except, well, I know who does this and I know who does that and who does this. So it's hard to show value. But I'm very fortunate that I work at a great company and I have a great boss and he understands the vision that I'm trying to accomplish because I was able to lay that out and say, this is where I'm heading. This is how I plan to get there. And here's what it's going to take to do it. And I've been very fortunate that he's been, you know, behind me 100% to get all that done.
I mean, I think it's gotten easier, I mean, these days, because I think, I mean, I'm sure all of you can relate, like 7, 8 years ago, like when you use a term community management, like people really don't understand what that was or so what the value was to companies. I think that's definitely gotten better. I mean, for a number of ways, I think we've done, as a community manager, done a better job of sort of articulating value, whether it's, you know, a lot of it quantifiable, some not, but sort of articulating those, you know, having set of metrics or values that we can communicate on a regular basis. I think that definitely helps. You know, it doesn't have to be like increased headcount. Obviously, that helps, but even things like being able to acquire tools to automate some of the work that you're doing, that's helpful. And then I think, David, like you mentioned, I think the like easy way to really scale is, I mean, there are a lot of committed and very passionate community members, and you know, whether you form a core group of people that you work with to rely on for advice or help, and it's amazing how many people are willing to sort of step up and help out. I mean, even if it's like a few hours a week, that's enormously helpful. And then, you know, I'm not the bottleneck for whether it's like moderating forums or helping with localizations and other stuff. And yeah, so those are, I guess, a couple of things like that I wanted to add.
Back in the days at Moz, we actually had a group of experts in the field that we paid, and we did not pay them very much. Like, it wasn't as if, you know, they were making a ton of money, but we had a group that we paid to help answer questions in the forum and write blog posts and all of that stuff. And, you know, very much like an MVP type program, but they were actually getting some monetary benefit, although what they really got was the prestige. And, you know, they put Moz as, they were a Moz, why am I forgetting the name? Not ambassador, but something like that. I can't think of what it was. And then the past two organizations as well, OutSystems and then Contentful, same thing. You know, we're looking to build out an MVP program right now because we need that, you know, those folks who are already active, who are already in the community, who are already doing all of these things. I want to give them something for it other than, you know, they're doing all of this for literally nothing. Finding some ways to give them some benefits and whatnot. But when it comes to resources, like adding resources, I am a huge fan of getting, not to make it sound like it's the easiest thing in the world, but getting those internal resources, getting people from other teams interested, looking whether it's in a forum or it's in, like right now, our community is in Slack. And it's getting folks kind of monitoring certain channels or whatever the case is, like getting those internal folks excited. And then what I really, my big evil plan really is to steal people from other parts of the company and reel them into community. And I've done that like over and over, of finding someone who is interested and, you know, kind of getting them up to speed. And I mean, they already know the product, they already know how the systems work and all of this stuff, right? So being able to like slowly pull someone in from other parts of the company into community. And there have been so many times where I've had people that are like, I had no idea that community was this path that I really wanted and I really love. And I think I've done that at most of the organizations I've worked at, is helping people who I'm like, you would be great in community, and sort of helping, reel them in. Because that solo community manager stuff is, I did that as well, and not my cup of tea.
Well, I think
yeah.
go ahead, please.
Please go ahead, please. No, it's fine.
You first.
Awesome, cool. I think if in my case, early on when we started working for NFT projects, we often don't get paid, right? And it's funny to see when the question is how to get more resources where we don't get anything for the work that we do. So what I used this little trick of incentivizing the members with an NFT that I make for the team, right? So I make an NFT and I mint it for free. And this kind of social validation works very well when you put it out in the public to the community, saying that, hey, so and so has contributed to the project, and as an appreciation or a gift, we are moving him to the next level. So this kind of social validation plays in their head, and they start contributing more. And we used to do these ambassador programs that kind of excited people to contribute more, probably an hour or two, probably 3 hours a day, and they expected nothing in return. So this is kind of a lean way of scaling the team and kind of managing it. But this is what we have seen, at least in the early stages. But right now, as Web3 companies mature and people have started to realize that building community is as important as your marketing, or even more important than your marketing strategy, people have started listening to community managers, saying that, hey, it's not cool that one person is handling a community of 3,000 members, but you need a team of moderators to actually delegate the work the right way, and tap each and every community persona. So yeah, that I just use these kind of lean techniques to scale my team and bring in more resources.
It's good. It's good. You should get paid. I'll say that.
Right now I do, but in the early stages,
yeah. But I mean, in fairness, I say that you should get paid. I started off my professional career as a volunteer. So I was in the community as a community member, and I said, hey, I have experience running communities. Would you like me to help you run yours? And I volunteered. And then eventually that company hired me. And that was my first professional community management job. Prior to that, I built my own communities and made them successful without anybody else's help. So
I always find it funny too, because when people say, like, when did you start building communities? It's like, well, I was building communities as a hobby in the 90s.
Yeah.
But I didn't really get paid until 2009. So I kind of put it there. That's kind of where I'm like.
Well, yeah, that was me. I built my first online community prior to 1998. I built my first successful community in 1998. I got my first paid gig as a community manager in 2007.
Yeah.
But between 1998 and 2007, I was running a successful community online, and I was able to kind of leverage that in. So
yeah, I did a whole bunch of community stuff, but I mean, it wasn't. Yeah. It's a totally different animal. But to get to your the question, I guess you guys all answered it so well. I don't know if there's so much more I could add, except that I have been noticing that there's been a trend of a lot of people getting intern help, to kind of assist in. Usually, how that works is people a list of, here's what I'm doing today, and here's what I could be doing, with a bit of help. And that usually, I mean, if you're lucky to be somewhere where you can get an intern or some kind of program in that way. I mean, I know different states and countries have things where companies actually get tax credits to do it, so it's actually to their benefit to, there's an opportunity for us to hire an intern. That's good. A company can get a tax credit. Let's hook you up with something.
Yeah. At Sienna, we had a really good program. It was intern-like, only we didn't call them interns, and we paid them as if they were a new hire. But that person, and it was a little cohort of people, I think it was 3 to 5, I can't remember how many exactly, but they would actually rotate through different areas of marketing. I'm in marketing where I am. So they would actually rotate through the different areas of marketing and kind of get a feel of what they liked and didn't like. And then, if they found something that they liked and there was an opening, then they could apply for it. And, we hired I think, into digital marketing, where I am in the specific part of marketing, digital marketing, we hired 2 people from that little cohort to work for us. Some of the other ones went on to other things in the company, and that's worked out really well. It's good for them because they can kind of figure out where they want to fit. I mean, if you say I have an interest in marketing, that's a very broad, swath of different skills and roles and stuff. And to be able to kind of get a feel for all of them and decide which one you best like, I thought was really good.
Well, in the early days of Vanilla, pretty much all the employees came from the open source community. Through there. I mean, that's how people found me. Even when I got hired, it was like, oh, I know you. You're in our community. They knew my username, and we, early on, that was kind of, even when people were hired at Vanilla starting out, they kind of got the tour of duty of the support forums, and they would, regardless of whatever role they had, it was kind of just to, get them acquainted with, customers and challenges that people had. And I think that always worked well because it reminded me of an experience I had at another company, which was, when you sit with a salesperson and you get to see what they go through. When a salesperson needs something, you kind of know what they need. And so it was nice to have the devs who just started with the company doing support in our forum so that, when a real support issue came up and you needed dev support, they would kind of understand the pain points around, okay, I get it. Like, you actually have to get back to this person, and me telling you, it'll be in the next sprint 6 weeks in a row doesn't really help me because, they're still bumping that thread asking when the solution is coming. So I found that to be really helpful.
Yeah. And I think, I kind of ended the last question with what Jen was referring to, was getting other internal stakeholders, involved in the community, even though they weren't, taking on the full responsibility, just kind of expose them to it and then show them the results from it. And then all of a sudden they wanted to be, invest more, whether that was giving you part-time, one of their team members or some of their budget, those are ways. But then also I think what Ray was talking about that I wanted to expand on is, this whole industry has definitely matured over the years. And one thing that's allowed us to do is really tie in, and this is up to the community manager to do, right? Nobody's going to do it for us, is tie in what the community is doing and how that translates into business results. Because nobody else cares about, oh, great, you increased the number of members in your community. Great, what does that mean, right? But if you can show, like, Adrian was talking about the support community. If you can show that the community all of a sudden is actually answering each other's questions, that is reducing the amount of tickets coming into your support team and getting responses quicker than your support team can do. Now you can tie that in and say, we show a reduction in our support costs by X number of dollars and X time. And that gets people's attention in that department, right? Because you're saving the team money and resources. And then all of a sudden, if you can say, and there's always a point of diminishing return, right? If you can say, oh, if we invest this much more in the community, we can double that and save X amount more, then they're going to give you some resources to be able to do that. But I think the other thing too is really making sure that we are aligning with those stakeholders, because a lot of times the community team doesn't have those platforms or access to those platforms or metrics. And you really need to partner with the person responsible for that in the other team to make sure that you can kind of, really pull all this stuff together so that you can present it in a way that other people in your company, from whether it be an internal stakeholder that is, in this case, responsible for support, but also to your C-suite team, so that they understand what the overall, most of them are all considered about what's the bottom line, right? How is this affecting our business? And so it's really about presenting it in a way that the support team understands it, but then also presenting it in a way that your C-suite understands it. And that, I think, is one thing that back in the early days, not many people understood. And definitely we didn't have the tools to be able to do what we're able to do today, which is get a lot more of that metrics and tie 2 different tools together and stack them on top of each other so we can start measuring. And that doesn't happen right away or overnight. Sometimes you need to actually, I always use the thing, always be experimenting, because if I had a hypothesis, I would put it into practice and measure small, and then show those small results to get the stakeholder buy-in. And then if we expanded that and showed even bigger results, that's when I did the formal presentation on here's what we could do. Here's why I think we can do it. Here's what I need. And usually didn't have any problem getting it.
Well, the little take on that I always love to do is, not necessarily getting people into the community, but getting the other people in the company to help out, is instead of talking about saving costs and support, is talking about the value of an answer, of the time that they spent on that. Because we had a scenario where there was a customer that I was chatting with where they had an engineer who was sending the answers directly to the customer via email, not answering, like they would ask the question in the community, but then they would go in, find the person's email, send them the answer, not post in the community. So we were able to calculate out what the cost was of every time that engineer did that and how much money the company was losing. I could tell you, they changed the company policy about exactly that for that reason, right? Because essentially they didn't need to get more employees in the community, but it just became like basically a standing operating procedure that if the question is there, it gets answered in the community right there, and they're able to kind of do a calculation of how much revenue that drove from those values of answers. So just a different take. If I thought that was a fun little way to go back. So the time about support savings, it was actually like revenue generating.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to like saving, like customer community support. I mean, one of the things that I really like about working with communities is that they provide you with like new insight. Like here's a new use case that I haven't thought about, like an edge case that our testers and engineers didn't think about. I mean, that insight's pretty valuable. Sometimes it's more valuable than someone writing a code. And I mean, that's harder to quantify, but helping you evolve your product so that it fits a new use case that's very valuable for like our product and engineering team. So, I mean, I think there are plenty of other ways to sort of articulate, what you get out of community versus just, cost cutting. I mean, that.
Oh yeah, I mean, it can be revenue generating, it can be innovation. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole host. I was just using that one because Adrian brought up that example.
I'm in complete agreement with you. So just saying it in a slightly different way, I guess.
No, thank you for bringing that up because somebody listening might not understand that. So thank you.
Well, that was the only reason I was clarifying. I think you knew that too, but I always get nervous. Someone like happens upon a stream and goes like, "That's only what community's for." But no, there's a smorgasbord of things.
No, in fact, where I am today, I'm in the process. We have an idea place in our community. It works, but it's not very functional. So we're in the process of setting up a new system for handling ideas completely, like swapping out software basically, because the old system didn't let you know there were new ideas. They didn't send out any emails that people could upvote, but you really didn't know unless you went and looked. And the new system is much more verbose. It tells you these things. And we're in the process of rolling that out because ideation is so important. Finding out, like you said, new innovation, product improvements, their pain points. Would be great if it could do this, those kinds of things. And in my situation, we're a large company dealing with even larger companies. We have situations where the sales team sometimes drives product improvements because they're going out and their customer, who's an 800-pound gorilla, is saying, would be really great if you could have this feature. And that will go to the front of the line because that's big money in the long haul. And our smaller customers who may have good ideas and opinions will get pushed way back. And in the idea community, it gives them the ability to combine with other customers who may be smaller and upvote an idea to the point where we have to take a look at it. And especially if it's a small company that comes up with an idea and one of the 800-pound gorillas says, what, that's actually a really good idea. I'm going to upvote that. And we know that, then, it's an improvement that we can get through. And that also conversely gives us the ability to go back to the community and say, what, that was a great idea. We've put it in the product. It's successful. Can I send you a t-shirt or some swag just as a small thank you for that? And it just feedback to the community to be more participative, to participate more because there's rewards. They can actually get 15 minutes of fame for coming up with a great idea that gets put into the product and then more broadly, used by everyone. And that's like a cricket almost. All right, so I have a couple of more questions here. Let's see which one would be good.
Spin the wheel.
Spin the wheel. All right, let's see this one. Okay, so oftentimes when we have new communities, we have people that see it one way and we have people that see it another. So how would you handle complaints that are in conflict with each other effectively while still giving people a voice? A good example of this would be something very relevant today, in that some section of the people think that you moderate too much. You get rid of stuff too much, and another section of the population says you don't moderate enough. There's stuff in the community that really shouldn't be there. You need to get rid of it. How do you balance that and still make people feel like they're being heard, even though you can't make everybody happy?
I'm going to jump in and just say one of the things that is always really important is having a set of rules, or whatever you want to call it, that makes it really, that clarifies some of that, right? So that you always have something to fall back on, that you can point to, that you can say. It's not going to cover everything, but I think having that set of guidelines, rules, whatever you call it, is really going to help you to be able to mitigate some of that, right? Maybe not in every scenario, but it gives you something to, and to know that you should update those rules and guidelines when those new things come up and you're like, oh, we should set this up. The other thing is making sure that whether it's your volunteers, internal folks who are in the community, also whatever, that they also have a clear understanding of what those are, or when to come to you, right? When to know to escalate and not jump in. Because
consistency.
How many of us have seen things escalate ugly because maybe somebody else in the company or something jumps in and like gives their opinion on something, and you're like, oh God, what just happened? Stop.
Shut your computer and go for a walk.
Yeah, exactly. Like, please step away from the computer.
Unreachable. What?
Yeah, clear rules, consistent enforcement, I think.
Yeah, I'm also a big believer in like community code of conduct. I mean that,
Absolutely,
as especially if that was developed pretty collaboratively, a lot of like early community members, and then I agree with you, Jen. Like, and sometimes it needs to be updated based on new circumstances, right? So even if especially if it was written like 3 years ago, then maybe you need to revisit and see if it needs tweaking. The other thing, I mean, especially this is a case where there is a disagreement, let's say between two people in an online forum. I think it's best to get those people sort of off that whatever platform you're on, whether it's Discord, Slack, or whatever, and just get on the phone with them. And rather than just continue to escalate publicly, that just doesn't look good for anybody, right? So if it's just a private call, like a Zoom call or Google Hangout with 3 people, and try and see if you can sort of mediate it. Because I mean, I think oftentimes it that sort of helps like cool things down. I don't know what it is about like online forums. It's just easy to escalate, but even if it's virtual on your computer screen, if you're seeing somebody's face, it's really hard to be completely rude unless you're really not a good person. So I mean, fortunately, that hasn't happened very often in my life because people tend to be pretty reasonable. But I think it's like if you see it like escalating really quickly, even after mentioning the code of conduct, I think it's just best to get them off the platform for a few minutes, take a break, and just talk to them as people.
Yeah. So
I absolutely love that, Ray, because I have given talks before on community building, and I always get people on the edge of their seats when I tell them about the latest, greatest tool that I use, and everybody's ready to write it down or put it in their phone, and I say it's a telephone. And they all look at me like, what? And I'm like, well, but if you think about it, it's like, if you message them in a forum, if you email them, anywhere that you do anything that's digital or written, they can copy it and share it with the world. And a phone call in most places can't be recorded without your permission. So what your conversation with that person is private and stays private. And what I've always done is opened up, giving that person just saying, and I'll give an example, like at HuffPost, when we had a commenter that was very active in our community, usually very, we didn't have to really block too many of his comments or ban them or anything. But because he followed our guidelines, and guidelines are definitely, you need those in place. Otherwise, you're running in the Wild West. He gets out of hand one time. And so I just emailed him and said, hey, would you be open to having a conversation? I just wanted to have a talk with you. And this is because my moderators noticed it and shared it with me. And I just had a conversation. I said, hey, you're usually so good. Something happened. One of my moderators told me, they had to delete some of your comments. I'm just wondering what's going on. And he gets to share and just say, hey, I was in a mood. Somebody got my thing. It didn't have anything to do with you guys. And just by giving him that voice and a chance to explain himself, really just calmed him back down and gave him a new commitment to want to be back in the community and commenting again in a very healthy and contributive way. And that wouldn't have happened if me as a community manager didn't step in and ask to have that one-on-one with him. And so I loved what you said about the phone call, Ray, because that is kind of my secret weapon with community members. It's getting them on the phone, because one is most people are used to seeing you probably in your community. But when you get the phone, that's now a personal connection that they have, a direct in that they have that not every other community member has. And they respect that. And again, there's always going to be some bad seeds that are not in it for good intentions, but the ones that are in it for good intentions will definitely not abuse that privilege that they have of calling you now. And actually, when they do, it's for very valid reasons. That, getting back to our last question, you can help innovate products or give some feedback to your team. But it's so valuable, I think, to have those private one-on-one conversations. And that's why I like the phone, is because it's not and can't be documented and shared publicly. Because trust me, I have had that happen with an email and a Twitter DM both before.
We often forget about low-tech tools, I guess, but they're useful.
Go ahead.
I hate using the phone. I hate it. I don't know why, but I hate it. But you're totally right. I just wanted to just reiterate that it's the human side, right? It's like, it's reminding folks also that, like, hey, so we're just other people. Because I think there's people on the internet, I'll often talk about, right? Like, you get this, like, you forget that there are other people that are there. And so people may say or do things that they wouldn't normally do talking to people. So getting them on whether it's a call or a video or sometimes even just taking it out and getting it into, I guess, email or something, just that helping to show that there's a human on the other end. I feel like helps people snap out of it.
I think I remembered that when I was at HuffPost, and I was just starting as a community manager for HuffPost Live, and Justin Isoff was the director of community at the time. And he told me when I was getting ready to call somebody, about HuffPost Live, he said, Tim, I just want you to realize something. Most people know Huffington Post, but they know nobody at Huffington Post or how to get in touch with them. You are going to be the first human that they talk to. And that just set in with me, and I respect that and I value that, but I also use it to my advantage.
Well, the only thing I was going to say, the hardest thing I think for new community people is sometimes there are just bad folks. That's the reality. And so I'm sure you could talk. Everyone here has stories on it, but there's sometimes the conversation doesn't work. I've had those rule lawyers that go, well, your guideline doesn't specify exactly this. It's like, you're really skirting the line there, buddy. And they keep breaking the rule, and you keep saying,
Yeah, that's why you always have that clause that says, for any or no reason.
Well,
we can simplify.
I think the thing that I notice, obviously, working at a vendor, I see from people that have brand new to experience. I think the hardest thing for new folks ends up being understanding that there's the word manage in community management, and you have to manage your community. And sometimes that means having those difficult conversations, phone, telephone, email, carrier pigeon, whatever that may need to be. And you're right, Tim, because I've had, several times where I didn't have to use the phone, but it was audio through Facebook Messenger and, that kind of thing. And just had the conversation. There was a spat between two individuals, kind of got there and calmed everyone. And then they actually ended up meeting in Toronto and having drinks because we were able to organize a meetup for the community there. And it was a good time had by all. And then it was kind of like, oh, they're not so bad now. And, the person actually calmed down and was a much better human being because they're kind of like, oh, now I've met this person. It's kind of hard to be rude when you've met someone and had a beer with them and a snack or two. So
yeah, it's a lot easier when you're behind a screen and using a username instead of meeting face to face and knowing who the other person is on the other side of the table.
Yeah, I just think it's funny because I do notice sometimes that people that are really new to community management want like the easy, like they think there's an easy way out to avoid it, and sadly there isn't. That's community management. Like it has to happen.
Yeah, this isn't great. Let me see if I can make it a little bigger. There's this on the
I would
internet.
like to add on what Ray was mentioning about guidelines, right? I think guidelines go ineffective if you don't keep the message running again and again in the community. Guidelines not meant to be just a channel in Discord server, but you need to drive that point again and again to make sure the community is aware of what the guidelines are, right? When the new members come in, and it is important that they are aware of what the new guidelines are. And I haven't had this crazy escalation in my community yet. So what I do is I add this Discord tooling bot, a ticketing bot in Discord. So I make sure that all the complaints and issues go through that bot. So it is only visible to the admins and the community managers. And what I do is if I find that to be actually, a serious problem and not just, someone complaining. So what I do is I just post that message anonymously and I post it to the community asking that, hey, if you guys are also facing so and so issue, just react to this, announcement. And when people react to this announcement, I add them to a group and I get on a call with them to discuss things. So I guess that's where I take them out of the community platform and make sure that community members don't pile on these messages and spread more negativity. I just make sure that people refrain from posting these negative stuff on the community platform and rather take it through the back channel of the directly going to the admins and then probably getting better results of the complaints, right?
And certainly the difference of a forum versus a real-time chat app as well, because certainly Discord and Slack communities can escalate a lot faster than a forum can.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think, and one thing I've seen,
refresh, right? It's not.
One thing that I've seen actually do, and this brings up a good point, is also conflict can also be an educational moment, right? And you can actually train that member on what the proper behavior or use of the community is. And it's not always easy and not everybody's going to be receptive to it. But if you take, I think, the right approach, know who the community member is and do it in the right way, it really helps kind of form their behavior in a more healthier way so that you're not always getting them in a conflict situation.
Yep. Very good. Well, we are up on time. So one more time, we're going to go around the wheel and just let you say who you are and where your people can contact you if they want to talk some more and get some more of your expertise. So we'll start with Tim McDonald.
Well, Tim McDonald, and you can find me at TA McDonald on Twitter. You'll find just about anything about me there. And it's the easiest place to connect with me. But if you're not on Twitter, you can find me on LinkedIn, Tim A. McDonald on LinkedIn. So that's the other place you can connect with me.
Adrian, you're up.
Hey there. So I'm Adrian. Obviously, Adrian Spire. You can get me on Twitter, LinkedIn, adrianspire.com. Get all the Adrian Spire stuff that you want. Very easy to find, I think.
Jen?
Well, with a name like Jennifer Lopez, I'm not always the easiest person to find.
But you really
No.
get dinner reservations the best of anyone I know.
Yeah. Jennifer Sable Lopez. Look that up. That's easiest. On Twitter, I'm Janita. I will warn you, I mostly tweet about like TV shows and Lin-Manuel Miranda and musicals. So there was a time back in the day when I would actually tweet about community stuff, and now not so much. But you can also find me on LinkedIn. Again, Jennifer Sable Lopez will actually find me.
Okay. Right?
All right. So I guess I don't have my last name on my icon, but you can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. Last name is Paik, P as in Paul, A-I-K, Ray Paik. If you put Ray and Cube, you'll probably find me pretty quickly on LinkedIn. And thanks for having me.
Yep. Akshay?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. It's akshayan.eth and in LinkedIn as well. And if you guys want to learn more about the Web3 side of building communities, you can definitely hit me up. We can have a proper conversation and definitely learn a lot from you guys. Thank you for having me. It was wonderful.
No, thank you for joining us. And I'm David Dewald. I'm a historian just about everywhere. Historian on LinkedIn, historian on Twitter. I got to tell you, that drives people crazy because I don't ever tweet about historic events or history or anything like that.
That's why I started following you, because I history. I thought I'd get some like cool history facts or something.
I mean, I can talk about the history of community management online if you want to talk about that someday.
There you go.
I feel like I've been doing it the whole time. But anyway, I do want to thank our guests for joining us today, and thank you to our audience. I hate doing this part, but if you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, follow, etc. on the platform of your choice. And of course, share it out to everybody. If you would like to be a guest on an upcoming episode, or you have a topic you would like us to cover, please head over to communitymanager.com, click the About Us, and hit the Contact Us page. And just drop your information in there, and we'll get back with you. Again, thank you to our guests, and thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
What is next week, David?
Oh, next week's going to be on podcasting for community, and we're going to have some podcasters out there come on that talk community management on their podcasts. So podcasts for community managers talking about making podcasts for community.
So meta.
Yes, I know, it's in there. All right, thank you, everybody.
Cool.
Take
Thank
care.
you.